wouldn't you argue if we are seeing that on these prominent men, surely it has to be an attribute of not necessarily from a look at me, I've got many wives and you have none, or look at me, I've got many women, but we can have women.
That's where men have probably gone wrong the most, in that I feel like the man has stopped thinking about the community and he started thinking about himself. These are the men's men. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because it is these people that are in charge of all
Everybody
people.
else.
Yeah. So these are, if when I use the term, the men's men of the Bible. And these are the qualities that it says the men's men of the Bible should have. In talking about what biblical masculinity is, I want to start off by talking about what biblical masculinity definitely isn't.
Okay.
Right?
I'm intrigued.
So I just want to have that conversation briefly, and then we can move on to have.
I thought you were gonna ask me what's biblical masculinity to you. I had a great answer lined up for you.
I will get there. No. So I'm glad you have a good answer, because I will get there. But after,
I didn't say a good answer. I said I had a great answer lined up.
Fair enough. Those are two very different things. But no, I want to start by talking about what biblical masculinity isn't. Right. So.
Okay.
I want to make the claim and espouse that biblical masculinity has nothing to do with physical appearance or with physical attributes. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes.
Right. So if we're talking about if we're talking about biblical masculinity, because there is this common image in society that masculinity is about, go to the gym, bro. You gotta lift heavy. It's about muscles and, the physical appearance of it, whether it's muscles or even height. It's a common misconception that a tall man is a man's man, right? Or a tall man is a man. It may not be the case, but so that's the first thing I just want to lay out that the Andrew Tates and the whoever's, I can't think of anyone else, will tell you that that's what it means to be a man. A man has to lift heavy, gym every day, or whatever. I want to claim that is incorrect, or at least not biblical. Yeah,
let's say not biblical.
No. Well, okay, fine. We'll say not biblical. Later on, I'll argue as to why I would even say incorrect. But okay, we're talking about biblical, so we'll say not biblical, right? That's interesting now. So you do think it's a part of what it means to be a man? Because that's interesting. So let's start there. So you would agree it's not biblical, but you would then agree that it's incorrect?
Not necessarily, no. I just wouldn't argue that it's not... I just wouldn't argue that... I wouldn't advocate or advise men not to be fit and healthy and have an active sort of like gym or sports kind of life. I wouldn't advocate for that, but I don't think I would put it as a core thing of what like the requirements of being a man. Does that make sense? So hence why I'm putting the separation, because I mean we're gonna dive into the Bible, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna pull up a few characters, but if we're going to the Old Testament, for example, they were full of battles and wars and stuff. Those people had to go to war and had to march for days. They had to carry some stuff. Physically, they were as good as they could ever be. I believe everybody in the Bible had muscles and six packs, except the Potiphar and the other one who had the dagger shoved in. Because when the people were fat, the Bible is not shy to say that.
Okay. So I want to understand. Are you just saying that in sort of like a lighthearted jest way? Or are you actually making a point that you do feel like being part of being a man is being physically healthy?
No, I'm making that in a light-hearted comment. And like I said, it's not a core. So it's not part of what being a man is.
Okay.
But I would advocate for those men that are able to also have an active life, especially in the modern days.
So okay, fine. So in the same way, you'd advocate everybody to have an active life. So for example, you would encourage women the same.
I would, yes.
Or is that advice that exclusive to men.
No. I would advise women all the same, but if there were a man and a woman there in a household, for example, and we're looking at the active life, I'll be looking more at the man and be like,
Why?
You need to be fit and healthy because we're talking about men.
Yeah, I know, but why would you be looking more at the man than the woman? No,
I don't know the woman body.
Huh?
I don't know the
You say you
woman.
don't.
Like,
what do you mean you don't know the woman's body?
I was listening to this discussion a couple of weeks ago, and the argument was made to say that part of mental fortitude for men comes from being active and whatnot. So it's part of we talk about the mental health side of men and things like that. They were also having that discussion to say that it's not, and the important thing is it's not to make everybody feel like if you are not doing that, then you are not. Yeah. But is to understand the importance of that active life as well, and the effects that has on the manly body, on the man's body, especially mentally as well.
No. Okay, so I first want to clarify. I'm not disagreeing that it is beneficial for men to be active. I wouldn't even disagree to say that it should be not mandatory, but heavily encouraged.
Yeah.
However, I do want to understand whether, because for example, I could say that sentence for me applies similarly to women than it does to men. In that for women, it is very important that you're healthy. So it is heavily encouraged that you remain as healthy as you can. You can be. So then that's what I want to understand from you, because for me that's not a gender specific encouragement or what's the right word? It's stronger than encouragement. What's
advice?
Stronger than advice. Anyway, but I agree. Staying healthy is, for me, it's a gender neutral charge. Yeah. For you, it sounds like it leans more on the man than the woman. So I'm trying to understand why.
I mean, I don't really know how I can articulate it, to be honest with you, but it's not that it leans more on the man than the woman, but it's the fact that we're discussing men right now and the importance of what man needs to do. So if you ask me, with the woman, for example, okay, so I'll give you this example. Hopefully it's going to work. Let's say we're talking about mental fortitude, like the ability to be able to be mentally strong.
Yeah.
That applies to both the man and the woman.
100%.
But I would say if I'm talking to a man, I would say that you need to have even more so of a mental fortitude, than your counterpart, because there'll be more on your shoulders. You see, there's more expected of you.
Right.
You see, so I'm taking that from the same aspect as the man. I'm saying that, I do believe it's important for you to stay physically active. What I'm trying to shy away from saying, because I know you're gonna clip me up on, is to
You'll be surprised. I could agree with you.
Is to say things like, should the world change and we need to run, hide and duck and go grab things, as a man, you need to be able to dash across the street to go get water and bring it back, that kind of thing.
Wait, so that's what you want to say?
No, it's something that I was debating whether to include or not, because I know the sort of like kind of worm that might open. So it's something that I would add in this discussion maybe later on. But there are certain things that you can hypothesize, as to why it's even more so important for a man than a woman. That would then go into maybe gender roles, and that's another discussion.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying that it's to both.
No, I
do
agree.
believe it's more for the man.
I was trying to get down to understand your why, but I do agree. That's the thing. I don't disagree. I just wanted to understand where your why was coming from.
Every time you say that, I'm always thinking he's trying to catch me out or something. I've not learned to accept those words.
No, and you said it in your talking as well. You said because more is expected of you, because more is required from you. I think you said, and that's that stuck out to me. And yeah, 100%. That 100%. As I think it is a fair thing to say that as a man, especially in a household, but let's say generally, but especially in the household, more is required of you, more is expected from you. So Yeah, anyway, I don't disagree. I just wanted to understand why. But definitely going back to the original point I'm making, I still wouldn't attach that to say, okay, no, to be a man means to be physically fit, right?
Exactly.
Aside from what it means to be a man, mano to mano, I'd be advising everyone be physically fit, right? But so that's the first thing. So the first one would say that when it comes to muscles, physical appearance, strength, strongness, whatever, that's nothing to do with what the Bible terms a man. The second one was about sleeping around. You know, there is, again, I'll go back to Andrew Tate. He's the one that's most prevalent in my mind. You know, people like him who established that being a man means being promiscuous or getting as many girls as you want, or, you know, the more conquests you have, the more of a man you are. Again, that's another thing I want to, right off the bat, establish that is not an attribute that the Bible establishes as one of being a man. Is that correct? Would it be fair to say?
Face value, I would be fair to say, but I would have a few more questions of discussion point.
Okay.
So, for example, we have sort of like strong, prominent characters in the Bible, Solomon being one of them, who the Bible does say that he had 700 concubines and 300 wives, or vice versa, that kind of thing. We know Joseph had 2. We know Abraham had the 1 wife, but was given the maid. Not sure about Lot. I think Lot had 1. Who else? You know, there are a few kings that had many as well. So my question would be, and I don't know if this would be in line with the discussion we're having, but my question would be, observing that even David, if we talk about David, now that's interesting because God does actually tell him when he took someone else's wife, saying that you have many of your own, and if you had wanted more, I would have given you more as well. And that's God saying that to him. So the conversation there to had would be, with what we're observing these men to be doing, what are we to take from that? Or what is that showing about these prominent men in the Bible? Wouldn't you argue that if we are seeing that on these prominent men, surely it has to be an attribute of what being a man was back in them days? Not necessarily from a, look at me, I've got many wives and you have none, or look at me, I've got many women, but we can have women. You know, I can have wives, we can have women, you know, that kind of thing. Again, not from a boasting point of view.
No. Yeah,
but
I understand what you're saying.
That. So that's what I'm saying, that's what we'd have to...
My response to that would be no. One could not argue that, because... I
mean, one could argue, but you can disagree with the argument. Go on.
Something. No, because we're talking about what the Bible teaches that men should be. We're not talking about the men that were in the Bible. So this is a whole discussion around prescriptive versus descriptive, right? The Bible would tell us a story of where, you know, Jacob slept with his daughter-in-law or something. Are we to take from that we can be going around having affairs with our daughter-in-laws? No, of course not. It's describing something that happened in the same way for all pretty much every person you've mentioned. But
with God saying, I could have given you more. Surely there's something there. And also, this was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Solomon, one of the wisest men ever lived. And we're seeing 100%. A similar, consistent kind of type of thing when it comes to women.
Yeah. So
there was also that man, very interesting story.
So I'll say 2 things. One thing is gonna be against what you're saying, but the other one is gonna sound like I'm in support of what you're saying, but I'm not. Against. No. I'm just simply saying that we still can't get that conclusion. So I'm gonna start with supporting you instead. So even if that's the understanding we take from it, we have to understand that all those arrangements were formal arrangements. They were not being promiscuous, right? So, for example, Solomon was his wives, David was his wives and concubine, and concubine was a formal status, I guess, in that society. So even in those examples, they were not sleeping around. They were not being promiscuous. They were informal relationships, arrangements. So if we want to transpose that, I guess we could be having a discussion about multiple wives. That's fine. If that's the discussion we're having, then I would be okay. But I would not be having it in the context of, oh no, it is okay for us to sleep around because this is what men in the Bible did. Does that make sense? So if it's in the context of having multiple wives, that's fine. We'll have that conversation.
Can I ask you a question? Not to go too far, but then speaking of Mr. Tate to mind, one of the things he talks about is obviously being financially able and physically able. He almost comes across like, okay, I can get any woman that I want. Have you ever thought about how these men were getting all these women, for example? Like, do you think in those days things were different? Especially we talk about the kings, for example. Is it because maybe they had no choice? Or was there an attraction that even these women had as well to these men?
No choice. Who had no choice? As in the women?
The women had no choice.
Oh, okay,
if the king said, you are coming to my house, the woman had to come to their house, that kind of thing.
No.
Or do you think there was an actual attraction as well from these women to this man as well that meant even David there, let's assume in his glory or in his kingship, he's seen somebody, the woman will be like, oh my days, the king has seen me, I like the king, oh I'm gonna go, and that's how all these women came.
I mean, look at the story of Esther. People wanted to be called in by the king. Like it was an honor among the women to be the one that the king summons.
So if we take that and then let's take Andrew and what he says, are we seeing a correlation there? What was that attraction? Was it the power of the king, or were they handsome? Was it the riches? What was it that was making these women want to be called in for the king to pick them as the wife? What did they want? Because he argues, and that's Andrew, in nowadays, that status, money, power is what these women are drawn to.
Yes.
Was that the same for them as well?
Yes, because women haven't changed. Women are still women.
So can we not say then that there might be a bit of truth to what Andrew says being a man is all about? If the same attributes that attracts women today were the same qualities and attributes that were attracting women to men back in them days, surely there has to be some sort of truth to what he says about what men need to be in this day and age in order to be a man. Otherwise, so what was going on there then? So
the issue that I think perhaps maybe Andrew Tate makes, and probably that you've made in your summary, is observing a human condition as being true doesn't mean it's the ideal thing to do. So for example, the whole reason that nations get manipulated is because people have realized, humans are easily manipulated. Does that mean it is then okay and it is their duty to manipulate? No. So if it is true that women are attracted to men with power and status and stuff like that, does that mean you then use your power and status to attract as many women as possible? No.
Okay, but doesn't that mean that being a man is about having power, status, and whatnot? Because you almost had a connotation.
Let me flip it.
You almost had a connotation of the man using that to like in a bad way.
Hang on.
Let's forget the attraction part.
Let me flip it. It's gonna help. It's gonna help. So to the point you're making. So let me flip it. Yeah. Men are, let's just say, men are attracted to big breasts, big butts, long legs, right? Does that mean what it means to be a woman is having big breasts, big butts, and long legs?
I don't think that would be a fair. No. I understand what you've done.
It's that same thing.
No, but it's that same thing, yes. But on this side, we're talking about unseen attributes. Yes, we've added the physical part of it, but we're talking about power, and status.
Yeah, but those are
so you could have someone with skinny legs.
Those are things that we put on. Those are not attributes. So in the same way, a woman can get big breasts, a man gets status. Is my point. So those are things that we put on. Those are not attributes. So my point is, if we're talking about power and status attracts women, yeah, does that mean being a man means having as much power and status as possible to attract as many women as possible? So you see the end of that. That's the argument
hold on. You see the end of that statement. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, fine. Forget the so that you're gonna attract many women. and stay on, does that mean that being a man is about having power and status? Is what I'm asking.
No, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the sleeping around thing, which is what led us to Andrew Tate.
Very
which
true.
Is which is what led us to this point you're making.
Very true.
The fact that power and status attracts men and women. Because in essence, that's the point
So
you're making.
it can be a consequence of what being a man is. It can be a consequence of if I live and aspire to be all that a man is, as a consequence of that, I am going to attract women.
And then?
You see, it can be that.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but then my point is, okay, as a consequence of that, you are going to attract women, and then you're going to sleep with all of them.
Okay, fine. Yes. Okay, fine. Let's say he's going to sleep with all of them, and he's not supposed to do that. I agree with that. There's no discussion.
No. But no, the thing is,
remember what I wanted to understand.
If there is no discussion there, then that's fine. We have no issue, because remember the statement the statement I'm uttering to say this is not what a man is biblically
is to say
women. Is to say that this narrative that's out in society now, that what it means to be a man is to get as many girls as possible. I'm saying that's a false misconception of what it means to be a man.
But you agree. Okay, I'm not saying
you are playing apologetics a little bit, and you're saying maybe, however, you're saying maybe there might be a bit of leeway here. You know, we may have to cut a shape out of the diamond.
Not necessarily. So I took the two observations. So I asked, first of all, I asked you a question about how were these women all gravitating to these people? Yeah. And I brought in the power and the status aspect.
Let's assume power and status was a part to play.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
And then I brought it to what Andrew would preach about the same thing. And he would talk about power, status. Yes, he would add physical attributes as well. But he would add power and status, financial stability and things like that. Yeah. That's what women gravitate to. So initially I was asking that was my question. Not necessarily to say that then to attract, but I was taking a little pause there to ask that, so can we say that there's a lot of truth, or can we say then that, you know, in both aspects, let's call this the past and the present, we're seeing that the joining theme or the connecting theme here is that men in the past that were gravitating a lot of women towards them had power and status and influence. And also Andrew here claims that men today who have power, status and influence will gravitate women towards them. So I was asking, okay, so does that mean that to be a man is about having power, status, and influence? As the consequence, of course, it's gonna gravitate women. Are women being are women being drawn towards the ideal man?
No.
Are they not built? Didn't the Bible say in Genesis that you shall yearn for your husband? Are women not built to gravitate towards men?
No,
is what I was asking.
And this is what I'm saying, that no. So the only true thing that has been identified in that is that women gravitate towards power and status.
That doesn't mean that to be a man is to have power and status.
I am arguing that, but I'm also arguing that that's what the Bible doesn't say that that's what being a man is.
Let's proceed.
Primarily, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, it's the human condition. Yeah, we can learn a lot about the human condition. That's why
the human condition after sin.
Yeah. But it's interesting though, and I see what you're doing. And it's interesting because I half agree, but then I also don't. So we'll get there when we get there eventually. Okay.
All right.
But then, of course, let's go to, I guess, the correct narrative, or let's look at what the Bible does paint a man to be. So where did you start with this? I guess is a good place to ask. How did you start thinking about this?
I thought about certain situations. I thought about struggles that certain men had to go through in the Bible. So I thought about Joseph's experience, for example. I thought about that experience with the man when they were going to war. Who was that? Who was the one and only female judge in Israel?
Deborah, I think.
Deborah, yeah. You remember there was a situation when they had to go fight some certain people, and the man that was there, instead of going to battle with God, he was like, no, I want you to come with me. And she said to him, this is dishonorable. Are you sure? So that experience came to mind. And the biggest one, which I knew was going to be an issue for you, obviously, I thought about Christ, because in the new kingdom, I think there's a lot of things that are big lessons that we can dwindle down to the everyday man. And the biggest example that I can give, for example, let's not forget that the Bible talks about Christ and the church as man and wife. Okay, so essentially, what Christ did for the church, we should be able to do for our wives, so to speak. Yeah, 100%. And I would even go as far as dying for the wife. You know, we should be ready to him dying for the church. We should be ready to die for our wives. You know, him being the head. You know, so everything that we read, the plans that he has for us, you know, all those good things, that's the mentality we will take for our wives. So when I'm sitting here in the new church, if I can say that, in the new way, what's it called? People of the way, I've got Christ as my picture, and I'm looking at all these big lessons, and then I'm dwindling them down to everyday attributes that I can then live out in my daily life, practice in my daily life. You see? So that's where I finished. But obviously I went around, and of course I thought about Samson as well. He must have had muscles, long hair, locks, to rip a lion apart.
I'm trying to. I have two jumping points in my brain, so I'm trying to pick which one. Okay, so then let me ask the direct question. So I've come to you and I've said, okay, the word has told me this is what a man is. Or we'll go from what we spoke about. The left have said this is what a man is. The right have said this is what a man is. AI has said this is what a man is. Pronic, what does the Bible say a man is?
Right. So what I would be doing there, now taking a bit more time, I would pull up a few biblical, let's say, experiences that I did not come across a word or a phrase that said this is what it means to be a man, but that shows certain attributes that I would pull up from the story. So, for example, of Abraham, I'm always inspired by his ability to believe in God and lead his house, his wife, his household to where God said you're going to go. Yeah. So if we're talking about leading your family spiritually, being in tune with God, you know, or believing in God, because in order for him to believe God, he had to already have, like, I don't know, you see what I mean? So already I'm talking about spiritually, I'm talking about, okay, fine, you need to be able to lead your house spiritually to this extent. So before you say, family, let's kneel down and pray and whatnot, again, paraphrased, you've already had, let's say, a communion with God yourself, kind of thing. Yeah. So a few other stuff that come up, a few examples where we can portray courage, for example.
All right.
You know, trying to think of situations where I can pull that from, but that's what I would be doing.
Okay, so
exploring men of the Bible, exemplary men of the Bible, in certain situations, and the attributes that they had to portray in trying to come up to say that, okay, this is how we ought to live. The last one, be of good courage. It didn't. Who was it? Was it Moses that was talking to Joshua? Be of good courage. And so on and so forth.
That was God to Joshua, but
okay,
Joshua was definitely involved.
Joshua was involved. Yeah. So that's how I would tackle that. But obviously, looking at the actual details of the passages to show why I'm pulling out those certain attributes, because if the Bible doesn't say like clear this is what it means to be a man, then we need to understand that we are pulling this picture from observing exemplary men in exemplary situations and how they dealt with certain things or how they handled certain things. Last one.
So do you have an example of one that you could do briefly?
one that I could pull out something.
Yeah. Or rather, no. Let's do it this way. So you say you'd be reading the stories, picking out certain attributes. So I'm interested in those attributes that you'd be looking for. So what are those attributes that you'd be looking for in different stories or certain stories?
I think let me try to think of one specific. Let me try to think of one that maybe can be more relatable to everyday life, because obviously I've mentioned the Abraham already, but that's, like I say, spiritually. Yeah. So I'll be pulling the spiritual aspect of it from the family.
Yeah. So you have mentioned Abraham, and you said that was about leadership.
Spiritual leadership.
Yeah. And then you mentioned courage as well.
Yes. But more faith, because that was to do with God. Lot, I can mention Lot. It's a tough one. I'll definitely add courage to Lot. Because if you remember the story, he went first. He was actually at the front. The family was behind him. They were following him. So in that sense, I can pull that up from the fact that now we're talking about leadership in the home kind of thing.
Wait, Lot is one that ran away from Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Didn't run away. He was told to leave.
No, fine, escaped. So the leading, are we talking about is that in the escaping?
Yeah, in them going up to the mountain.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, fine.
Them going up to the mountain. And don't forget, he actually went and preached or tried to get all his
No. I just wanted to
get
understand the reference that was being referenced.
Yeah, so things like that. Let's continue. I'll
Whoa. I mean, what do you mean? Let's continue. So I've asked you. So the question has been asked to say, Pronic, what is biblical masculinity?
So you want more?
Oh, is that your answer finished?
No.
Is that your comprehensive answer?
Not comprehensive.
No.
Not
comprehensive answer to that question I've asked about what is biblical masculinity.
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I would go about it with two examples I've just given.
No, I wasn't asking you how you go about it. I was asking you to go about it. Because remember, right now, that's what we're doing. We want to explore what the Bible says it is to be a man. So, fine, that's how you'd go about it. But then I guess that's why I asked for an example, because I want to go about it, because I want people to understand at least concretely as a foundation that, the Bible says this is what it means to be a man. Because I was interested that you thought about men of the Bible, whereas I started thinking about verses to men. So I'm not gonna. I didn't at all think about the men of the Bible. So I didn't look at any attributes that any of the men inhibited per se, because I was focusing on the verses that I guess I could say are directed to men or are for men. Because in that I was trying to say, okay, fine, if I'm trying to understand what the Bible thinks a man should be, then I should look at what the Bible says to men. So that's how I went about it. But then that's why I was interested, because now it's a real life experiment, because I want to see if we can meet it. If we will, because if they do meet, then great, then alignment. If they don't, then something's off.
If they don't, then there's the discussion there.
But that's why I was asking about. Okay, I want details. I want. So if you're talking about attributes, what attributes are you looking for, or in the stories that you were reading, or in the stories that come to mind, what attributes stood out to you?
So yeah, again, I think you're just gonna get me to repeat more and more here, but as you were talking, I thought of a few more that speak of, for example, courage. Yeah. So again, the man I spoke about with Deborah coming back. Who is this one? I don't want to use Moses because he's a bit tricky. Now I'm coming to the New Testament a little bit, thinking about is it Timothy or whatnot? when he's talking about a man ought to be a leader of his household, that kind of thing. Again, so the recurring theme that was coming up for me in all these characters was that leadership, that courageousness, that ability to be able to. It's like men were always first in everything, good or bad. You know, it's like they were the experiment, if I can say that. You know, one of my personal favorites, but it's a bit of a stretch.
How so?
It requires details. It's a bit of a stretch. But yeah, no, I think there's nothing more I can add.
Okay, well, I mean, like I said, I came at it from a different point of view, because I mean, to be fair, looking at the men may have been interesting, but I wanted to see what the Bible had to say to men. So I started looking at verses that now a lot of the Bible is directed to men. We know that because obviously, if Paul was writing to the church or whatever, it was probably like writing to the deacons or whatever, or those that were able to read. So
does that mean that it was directed to men, or
no,
they were the receiving? Because I think you'd have to clarify what you mean by they were directed to men.
No. So as in the physical letters,
yes, they will be directed. So if he's writing to the church of the Philippians, he's writing to the deacon of the church of the Philippians.
Yeah,
not necessarily saying that the content is addressing men.
Yeah.
The clarification.
Yes, yeah. And the reason I made that point was to say that because sometimes when it's writing, making a general point, the language might be gendered language, but not to mean that this is only for men, but because it's like mankind, for example. When you're talking about like man, you say mankind, but obviously you're not just talking about men.
And that's why I was seeking that clarification. Otherwise, you could almost take a lot of writings and eliminate women in them, but then you'll find the content is addressing believers.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. However, there were some that were
specific to men.
Just talking about men. So having thought about it, I was actually surprised at the answer I landed personally as to what biblical masculinity looks like.
Okay.
Because I think going in, I was in agreement with like sort of the right/AI, you know, talks about, it was about like provision and protection and, you know, those kind of things, duty, honor, family, great. No issues with those. And I thought that's what I was going to find
as well. Okay.
But I was pleasantly surprised to see that that's not the focus.
Okay.
And I want to clarify to say not the focus, because it being not the focus doesn't mean it's not necessary, doesn't mean it's not part of it, doesn't mean it's not important. But I'm saying
to simplify things, so that we're on the same page, it's either we are saying that's what it is to be a man, or it's not. So let's leave whether it's necessary or important aside.
Okay, fine.
So that we are focusing on whether it is or isn't. And I'm sure by now we are all understanding that there are certain, just like we were talking about the physical attribute of it, you know, we're saying it's not the core, nor is it what it means to be, but in another conversation, we are saying it's important. So we can leave the things that are not necessary or that are not part of it, or those other lingering legs that are going into it apart, because from the point you are making, if we want to come up with a pure point to say, okay, fine, you know what? Boom, this is what the Bible is saying a man is. We need to leave a plate of the core of what the Bible is saying, what a man is, without any lingerings.
Well,
for simplicity of understanding.
I understand what you're saying, and that's harder because what it means to be a man, or the things that man should be doing, is a lot.
Okay.
So it's not something that...
Again, wouldn't we separate what a man needs to be doing to what a man is?
Why would you separate them?
Because if we go to the definition of the right, for example, a man is a protector, a provider, a leader, is confident and things like that.
So what should a man be doing?
So no, what I'm saying, that's what they define to be what a man is.
Yeah.
And then under that, we can have a lot of things that men do that can proof to that.
I'm sorry. Because what a man should be and what a man should be doing should be the exact same thing. So if we say a man should be a protector, a provider, or whatever else, a man should be protecting and should be providing.
But then how they are protecting and providing, doesn't that vary?
Well, no, because the point is, are they protecting or are they providing?
Fine. I'll let you know why I'm saying that as we go on, because I think we're going to come to a certain point where it's going to be like, okay, fine, we need to separate them. But let's go for now.
Fine, we'll see. Okay, so then, like I said, the Bible says a lot to men and also what it means to be a man, and of course you can do what you've done and also sort of not read between the lines per se, but look at other passages and be like, okay, well, this is clearly a part of it. And I did do a lot of that, but I summarized it to 3 points because I wanted to, as much as possible, get it down to 3 points. Because obviously we looked at 3 points for the right, 3 points for the left, and 3 points for AI. So I was like, can I? And it is harder because, like you said, there's a lot to it. But I think I managed to get some good headway with it. So obviously you can let me know what you think to see if there is any merit there, or you would maybe replace the 3 with others that you think are more prominent. But the first one that I was like, well, I think this is one of the big tenets of what it means to be a biblical man, is to be courageous.
Okay.
Right? Now, courageous, I read the definition of it. Now, I understood it one way, and then when I read the definition, I was like, oh wow, that adds a bit more to it.
Meat to it.
So courageous is the ability to do something that frightens one, or / bravery, or strength in the face of pain or grief.
Okay.
Right? So that's what the word courageous means, just biblical dictionary definition.
Okay.
And obviously you can see why maybe you can't, but you can see why I like the definition of that, because it talks about the ability to do something that frightens you, or strength in the strength in the face of pain and grief, right? Now, already that adds in a lot of, I guess, some of the points that we tackled last time we were speaking about. You were trying to explain that if your wife's breaking point is this, then your breaking point should be that, or whatever. I mean, I understood it. All that fits into being courageous, because it's about the ability to keep strong, keep steadfast, keep going in the face of pain, grief, difficulty.
So would one also add that you need, in order to be a protector, you need to be courageous. In order to be a leader, you need to be courageous. In order to be confident in something, you need to be courageous.
Unless you can show me a situation where you can be a leader and not courageous, or be a protector and not courageous.
Okay. No,
or any of those things. No, I'm agreeing, but I'm saying that
because I'm bringing that definition into it to see if that fits.
Which definition?
The right definition we discuss.
No. Yes, fine. No, but this is why I was like, I don't know if it can be that simple, because if you're talking about courageous and you understand that being courageous means, having strength in the pain of grief, whatever, and doing something that frightens you, then all of a sudden you see all these other words that fit right into that.
Exactly.
Because it's like, well, there is no way I can do this thing without being courageous, or can I do this thing without having this courageous spirit? So you see that a lot of things will fall into these categories.
Okay.
So yes.
So my character biblical example there would be something like what David did in the time of Goliath, for example. Can that be something we can deem courageous that he did?
Or the fact that Moses went to speak against Pharaoh.
Okay.
Or the fact that a 12-year-old girl went and spoke boldly to a king. I know of a servant in Israel who can hear. But do you see what I mean?
Samson collapsing the pillars and killing himself and everybody else.
Strength in the face of pain and grief, the ability to do something that frightens you. So now with that, you see loads of instances of courageousness, because if someone is doing something that frightens them, something that they know this could turn out badly, but because of the greater purpose behind it, and no, I must do it anyway. Courageous.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Now, I mean, there were a lot of verses, but obviously I don't want to read a bunch of verses. But two stood out to me. The first one was the fact that in Revelation 21, cowards are mentioned as well as people that are outside the city. So in contrast, a coward is one lacking the ability to do or endure dangerous or unpleasant things.
Okay.
And again, I don't know about you, but I feel like we are raising a generation of cowards at the moment, because 100%. From the time a child is born, it's like we try to shield them from all unpleasant things, from all difficult things, from all dangerous things. And it's like, well, you're just going to raise a bunch of cowards who, as soon as anything is unpleasant, oh, mental health.
There you go.
Oh, depression. Because it's unpleasant. You see, so the issue isn't the unpleasant thing. The issue is you're a coward.
Jeez.
But I think that does add a lot to what's happening with our generations thus far. But yes, there is a verse in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13, which I'm going to double back to. But the first part only says, verse 16 on 13 only. Hey, 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13 only says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, or be courageous.
So strength.
Yeah?
Strength. Act like men, be strong.
Yes, yeah. But this strong is a mental fortitude strength. It's like be strong, like, be enduring. But again, yes, I'm gonna stop there. Unless you want to argue it's physical strength, then we'll carry on. Okay, so that was the first one. Courageous. Second one, it's a bit more tricky, but I summarized it as maturity, as mature.
Okay.
Right? Now, this one was born from... Okay. Firstly...
You're right. That one is a bit more tricky.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay. So firstly, maturity means to become more developed mentally and emotionally and behave in a responsible way. Right? Now, just before I delve deep into maturity, let me go back to courageous a little bit, because I did forget to make the point that this courage translates into multiple aspects of your life, right? And likewise with this maturity that I'm talking about, right? So, for example, in the same way you can be courageous in your faith, you can be courageous, to do what's right at work, for example, or you can be courageous in the street, whatever, right? But it's also maturity. So the definition is to be developed mentally and emotionally and behave in a responsible way. Now, I don't know why this came to mind, but as soon as it did, I started thinking of verses like, remember Corinthians when Paul says, when I was a child, I spake like a child, I reasoned like a child, but when I grew up, I put all childish things away. And then there's a bunch of other verses that talk about maturity and growing and not acting like babes and, what's the one? You should be teachers by now, but you're still learning. But anyway, all of that to say that, where am I?
Maturity. So my Bible character example there could be what Joseph faced with Potiphar's wife.
Go on.
You remember she seduced him or wanted to sleep with him, but he was mature enough to be able to say no. Acted in a responsible manner.
Right.
When she threw himself at him, basically.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay.
To the point where he even faced when she then spun it, and then he ended up in prison. But even in prison, still acted in a very mature way, in the sense that he didn't hold it personal. Still interpreted the vision, the dreams. I even said, "Remember me when you go there." So again, if you were to be studying that section of the story, you could pull out the maturity that David had, considering he was such a young man at the time as well.
Yes, Yes, I'm gonna say yes, with a question mark. But yes, I'm gonna say yes, and the reason is because the maturity. It's a harder concept to grasp, but I want to read a passage that I think is a summary of what a mature man looks like, or all the attributes that are likened with a mature man.
Okay.
Right? Because remember, maturity is about developing, right? And the passage is 1 Timothy 3. And I think you referred to it as well. But it talks about the qualifications of a deacon and an overseer, right? The reason why I used these is because a deacon and an overseer are like even the Bible says if you desire to be a deacon and an overseer, it's good. It's a noble task that you aspire to, right? So these are the men's men. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because it is these people that are in charge of all
Everybody
people.
else.
Yeah. So these are, if when I use the term, the men's men of the Bible. And these are the qualities that it says the men's men of the Bible should have. 1 Timothy 3. 1, above reproach. That's above allegations, suspicion. You know, your conduct should be above board. 2, the husband of one wife.
What?
2, the husband of one wife.
If you want to be a man's man, if you want to be a deacon, if you want to be a man, you can have multiple wives. Like, what's your problem? Keep it going. Keep it moving.
3, sober-minded. 4, self-controlled.
Sober-minded, self-controlled. Joseph. Go on.
5, respectable. 6, hospitable. 7, able to teach. 8, not a drunkard. 9, not violent but gentle. Not quarrelsome. 10. 11, not a lover of money. And 12, he must manage his own household well. Right? So the reason that list stuck out to me, I feel like that was the best way of trying to communicate what I meant when I summarize it as maturity, right? Because the Bible talks about men growing to maturity. Obviously, when I was a child, I reasoned like a child. It talks about, brothers, we can no longer be thinking like children. You know, in this day and age, in evil, be infants, but in reasoning, be mature, right? So I was trying to summarize best what I meant by this maturity, and that's the passage that stood out to me to say, this is a reasonable summary. But you're thinking.
I mean, I do agree. I think, I agree on the aspect that we can call it a reasonable summary. I think a lot of them we can break them down a little bit more and maybe have even more conversations a bit more.
Really? Like which?
No, as in just make it a bit more applicable. So for example, if you say respectable, what are you talking about in that context? Because remember, you're saying that this is a summary of maturity, and then respectable has come up. So what do you mean by respectable? That's what I mean. Like there's more that we can dissect. But as a summary, I do agree.
So I sort of agree with that, but then when you say let's say respectable, we're not going to go into the conversation, but just give me an example as to why there would be something to break down in respectable. Because what confusion could there be in respectable?
Not necessarily confusion,
or
but
further
more understanding.
Yeah. What further understanding?
So, for example, what is what literally that? What does it mean to be a respectable person?
Well, I would argue, we know what respectable is in our day and age, so just apply that understanding.
That's the discussion then. So that's what I mean.
Oh, so you don't? No, I thought you were gonna push back on that because I thought you were gonna say, well, no, that's why I gave the answer. Not
push back, because the point I'm trying to say is that I agree when you said it best when you say that it's a reasonable summary.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah, because I do agree that maturity in how you're bringing it can be quite a vast sort of like area to discuss. You know, when you say what does this maturity looks like? You've said a man's man because it's addressing, let's say, deacons or overseers. I would want to argue that this is something that I would say all men should have. But the context that it's written in, it's obviously an overseer and a deacon or whatever. But I would want to argue that it's for all men.
No, but you see,
so
I would be fine with that argument because the context here is the deacons and overseers among you have to be the best among you, right? So the idea isn't for me to say, oh, you know what, I don't want to be a deacon, therefore I don't have to be self-controlled. No, it's the fact that these are qualities that every deacon must have.
Exactly.
Ideally, every man has,
but then those that want to be
must have. Yeah.
So I agree with the term "the best among you." So that's why that came to mind. So that's why I'm saying that as a summary, it's great. And I do agree that it does speak to maturity. I was just adding that I do believe that there would be a bit more breaking down on some of them for the sake of understanding, not necessarily to say that there would be confusion or anything like that, but for the sake of understanding what it actually looks like on the ground level, if I can say that.
Right, okay. All right, fine. So that was 1 and 2.
Courageous
and maturity. Right? Courageous and
again, just to add on the mature, we actually touched on it when we were discussing the far right, because it did talk about discipline and self-control.
We're just talking about the right, not the far right.
Sorry, and the right, because it did talk about emotional maturity as well.
Yeah.
And it also spoke about self-control as well. You know, so just adding it in there to say that at the moment, what we discussed last week, again, the reason why I'm doing this is because you started off by saying that you found yourself seeing something completely different. But so far with 1 and 2, I can already liken to what we saw in the right sort of like definitions.
Yeah.
You saw what I mean? So that's why I'm pointing that out to see maybe where later on where your differentiation is gonna come in, or where it's gonna say that this is why it was like sort of like a cut difference. Because I'm not saying it can't happen, but so far I'm seeing that they are fitting in. I like the way you've taken them, but even those attributes we saw in the right are fitting in what we've discussed so far when we talk about courageous and maturity.
I'm gonna explain the difference that I meant a bit later, but it's more of a mental shift as opposed to I'm gonna be saying something different.
Gotcha.
But it's about
the source of.
I guess the pecking order that the understanding goes in your mind.
Okay.
For lack of a better word, but I'm gonna expand on it a bit later on, right?
Okay.
The third one that I want to summarize with is driven by love and service, right? So
okay, that one I would admit is different. I don't think I can say that one existed on the right,
and nowhere else as far as I can think. But it's definitely one that the Bible emphasizes over and over again. And going back to that 1 Corinthians 16 verse that we read, so remember we read it starts with be watchful, stand firm, act like men, be strong. 14 says let all that you do be done in love. Right? And then of course we have another passage in Philippians talking men as well, saying do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. And of course, I'm sure every Christian here can start thinking about all the verses where that the Bible talks about, you know, us acting in love and it's showing love and what love means, etc., etc., etc. So we know the tenet of love is a big thing among Christendom. But I found it interesting that it cropped up in an instruction to men as well, to say that let all that you do be done in love. And the thing is, this could be love of anything and everything. So, for example, love of your wife, love of your kids, love of your community, love of your country, love of God, love of Well, yeah, I think that's probably the end, isn't it? What else are you gonna love? I
I don't know what else you can have, but you can remove love of your country.
No, listen. If you haven't got it, that's fine. But I not only understand, but to a certain extent, I'm envious of people who have a passion for their country. I'm not envious. Envious isn't the right word because I could if I wanted to.
You don't
But
think that they are casting their eyes on worldly things.
Well, no, it depends how this love for your family is being manifested.
Discussion for another day.
You love
You go on.
if you love your country more than you love God and the heavenly things, there's an issue. If the love of your family comes after your love of God, then it's going to just say family again, country. I mean, if you love the country, then it's going to slot in somewhere without issue. So yeah, if it comes in conflict, there's an issue. If it doesn't, it's in the same way someone can love reading, for example. You know, not an issue if it's below God, an issue if it's on par of above, right?
All right.
But the reason I listed those things is because you can then think of situations or I guess situations or scenarios where a man is acting or is doing something out of love of, let's say, his children. So in my head when I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, can I see myself standing outside like a school, for example, protesting against something, you know, the LGBT or whatever. I'm like, well, yeah, because I'd be doing it out of love for my children or my children's welfare or whatever. One could argue put them out of school, homeschool them.
I was literally about to say that or you can just put your children out of your... What are you doing outside in the cold with a placard?
Fine, but then I could also be thinking of love of other people's children because
and then you tell them
you made this argument before actually to say if you don't want it for your child. I think when we're talking about Lily Phillips and the way of thing, if you don't want her for your child, why are you gonna want her for someone else's child?
Community is the same
then you see. So my point is, I could understand how that action could be done out of love of something. You know, you're trying to do what is right by something that you love. You're trying to protect something that you love, and you see when there is love, naturally there's going to be protection because if you love something, you want to protect it, you want to nurture it, you want to care for it, you want to so it was that was the third one that really summarized it to say, yeah, I think if I had to break it down into the top three, because obviously that's what we did for the other things, the top three, it would be those: courageous, mature, and driven by love and service. And
so what's your pecking order then?
In terms of?
No, because you said that you're gonna show the pecking order or something like that.
So the reason now I'm saying that it's just a simple mind shift in the pecking order is because before, if you had asked me, okay, what's the top three of being a man, I would have said something like along the lines of provider, protection, and to be fair, I probably would have said something like being a spiritual leader in the home or something. And again, I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm not knocking them in any way. Whatever weight they had in your mind, keep them there. All I'm saying is that now I wouldn't be focusing on those things. I'd be focusing on courage, maturity, and this one the most being that my actions and my life is driven by love. Because the thing is, especially for us men, we're prone to either be driven by pride or ego, or flip that, anger and pain and resentment, or it could just be simply money, or, you know, we can very easily get to a place where our actions are being driven by other forces other than love and service for community and for mankind. And I think that's where men have probably gone wrong the most in recent history. In that I feel like the man has stopped thinking about the community and he started thinking about himself.
So what's the mental shift then?
I've just told you. Before I guess before I would have been focusing on external. Yeah, I'd have been focusing on the external things, which is providing, protecting, leading, as opposed to the internal qualities that me as a man, I need to have. Does that make sense? So if I'm thinking about, okay, fine, what does a biblical man need to be? I'm not saying the biblical man needs to be a provider. I'm saying the biblical man needs to be courageous, mature, and driven by love. Now I'll ask the question, show me a situation in which a man can be those three things and not provide for his family. Does that make sense?
I mean, the reason I was asking that is because I'm seeing a common sort of like situation that often, I don't know if I can say the world of Christendom we find ourselves in, because listening to that, like you've said in your last statement there, you're going to ask, show me a situation where you can be courageous and not be a provider, a protector, or the other one, and the answer is most likely always going to be, or there are none, because if you're courageous, you're going to provide for your family, you're going to feed your family, you're going to protect your family, you're going to do all this for your family. So one can argue that they're one in the same thing, but I think the important thing to take note there is your definition in the first place. I'm seeing
Definition
of what masculinity, or what a man is, basically, because I'm seeing one to be the world's definition, and I'm seeing the other one to be the, let's say, biblical definition. And if we focus on biblical, let's say, teachings and definitions of things, we arrive to what you've just arrived at. Does that make sense?
All right. Okay.
So it might be the same approach, the same everything, but that's why I was asking you, so what's the mental shift? Well, the mental shift is what you have as the answer is, for example, what you're seeing God to be charging you to be. And that changes everything.
Yeah.
You see? And even your outlook on life, for example, there might be certain pressures that you might be facing if you are a worldly man, and let's say you're not earning enough and you're trying to, man, but I'm a man, I need to provide for my family. There's a certain pressure that might be there that won't be there if you are looking at it from, yes, I'm a man and I need to provide for my family, but then how you're tackling that situation would be different. There'll be a different kind of pressure.
It's also about provide what? Because if you,
I think in this context we talk about.
I'm saying that if you inhabit the understanding's world of providing, it means provide them with what the world considers a good life.
Okay,
so in you trying to provide for your family, you're trying to match the Joneses.
Fair enough.
Because if your family is not like the Joneses, then you are not fulfilling your role as a man in providing.
And like we spoke about Andrew Tate, for example, what he portrays is, well, if you are not driving a Ferrari, then what's your woman doing with you, for example?
But if you understand it differently, and if you understand what provisions you need to meet for your family. And
even the priority list will differ, because you might be, okay, fine, am I providing spiritually for my family? And if that's being handled, even the pressures that might come from your children or your wife, for example, will be completely different, because the expectation won't be that of, let's say, a secular family might be placing on you, because they're thinking, definitely, where's my Ferrari? You see what I mean? Whereas if you are providing spiritually first, and then, even the spirit of the family will be completely different. So
that's the point I was gonna make.
So that's why I was trying to get you to highlight on the mental shift that you're talking about, because I do agree on that mental shift, and it's the same for everything. I feel, I used to always say, once upon a time, even when we look at definitions of, not definitions, but any single thing that we are tackling in the world, you take it to the Bible and see what the Bible is saying directly or indirectly. You take that, you're going to be okay in the world.
100%.
You saw what I mean?
100%.
So I think to add to what you're just saying, that the modern man, if we're talking about Christendom, has turned to self, not necessarily because of, like, purposefully, or maybe not even because of pride or anything like that, but because the focus has shifted from God to now what the word says to man. Yeah. You see what I mean? So now it's like you are in church and, you are looking at your fellow person there, and like now it's like, oh man, you know, they have a mortgage, I haven't got a mortgage yet, or, you know, they are on their second, third mortgage and I'm still renting. You see what I mean? Now it's like all these things and whatnot.
Yeah.
Why? Because Andrew Tate said that if you don't own your house, you're not a man.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah, and well, I think the point you made there is important because it's difficult sometimes to wade through the mess, because when you listen to Andrew Tate talk, you can agree with like 90% of what he's saying.
Because that 90% are attributes, are things that might exist under courageousness.
Yes, yeah,
You see?
yeah, yeah.
And that's why earlier I was saying that, well, we might need to separate the core from the activities, because the activities can always vary. If you look at the umbrella of courageousness, you can be courageous in, like what you said this before, you can be courageous in your work, courageous in your
100%.
Gym life, courageous in your I don't know if I say gym, but all that. So when Andrew is speaking about, let's say, being a man, you know, if things are tough, get up, you know, go give out those CVs, you know, don't take no for an answer, work hard, you know. Well, you're gonna be sitting thinking, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. You see what I mean? But then is that really you get what you're supposed to be doing? You know, so yeah, that's why I think the 90% always sounds good. But then you need to dissect it and keep focus of your beacon. Because if we have the words beacon, then Andrew Tate is going to get you feeling all sorts of way. But then if you have God's beacon, you can still get inspiration from what he's saying, you know, but then channel it the right way.
But I don't think I can end that any better if I do say so myself. But yes, I mean, I don't know how you'd, I mean, you've been commenting as we've gone through each point anyway, so I know exactly where you stand. But I did find it interesting. Because you can sort of get down to grassroots and say, okay, you know, we should be, I don't know, getting up early every morning, exercising every day, or doing, you can have all those conversations.
Which wouldn't be wrong.
That's my point. Which wouldn't be wrong, but my point is all those will always end up being a consequence of what are the headlines, right? And what's the prevailing thought or understanding in your mind, because that's what all your actions are going to stem from. And you could be, you know, doing all these things, being a provider for your family, but if those actions are driven from fear and anxiety and self-reliance,
You won't even enjoy the process.
Not even that, but my point is, if you put it up against the Bible, it's gonna fall short. Because God will be like, well, yes, you've got lots of money for your family, but that's I don't care about that. That's secondary to me. You know, for God, it's not even on the map, because it's nothing. For him, it's like that. Something else matters more. But yeah, ladies and gents, that was our discussion around the biblical masculinity. Let us know what you think. We went to a few areas there. We tackled a few things. So whatever stood out to you, whatever you agreed with, disagreed with, whatever resonated, whatever troubled you, you let us know. We read every single comment at the moment, and we will reply to as many
Because we don't get
as
many.
we can. Listen, you can follow us on our social medias, our Instagram, we have TikTok, we have X as well. We're going to be active there eventually. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're also on Rumble, where you can get the full 2 hours and about 15 minutes of the conversation, pure and edited from beginning to end, except a tiny break we took because I couldn't hold my pee. But that's over on Rumble. Find us over there if you want Offbeat POV. Ladies and gents, my name is Chin. This is Pro Nick. And we're Offbeat POV. Bye.